I'm Juan Davies, Chief Creative Officer at KCET and PBS SoCal, and I'm joined by the newsroom of KPCC and LAist on a daily reporter roundup. Let's start with you, Adolfo. You've been covering the COVID outbreaks at some of the CSU campuses. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that there were big outbreaks at Chico State, at San Diego State, and that has people asking whether those kinds of outbreaks can happen at LA area Cal State campuses. And in my reporting, I found a patchwork of COVID policies among the local Cal State campuses, even though they're part of one system. The Cal State Chancellor's Office hasn't imposed one set of guidelines for all the campuses. At Cal Poly Pomona, for example, students and employees who come to campus are required to fill out a web-based symptoms checker. But on the other end of the county at Cal State Dominguez Hills, there's nothing like that. They just barely rolled out this week a symptoms checker on their campus app, but they're not requiring employees to fill it out, just students. So the union that represents campus clerical workers, some of whom are going to campus to work, says this kind of situation puts the employees' health at risk.
We know the pandemic is reshaping education in 1,000 ways, but it's also exposed some problems with how teachers grade students. Kyle's been following that story.
Yeah, so last spring I met a teacher who knew that when he was grading his students at the kind of the thick of the crisis, he knew that his district's grading policy would allow none of his students' grades to backslide, none of his students would be getting Fs, but he still found the whole system kind of illogical. He didn't understand why students would be rewarded for completing work during that time. So he just decided to give all of his students As. And that decision and meeting that teacher last spring sort of sent me on a quest to figure out what other schools across the area are doing, how they're handling it. There are a lot of different ways that grading can be handled. And the thing that I've learned from talking to a grading expert who's been studying grading for 30 years is that there are a lot of inequities involved with how schools grade students' work, and that the pandemic has really exposed a lot of the ways where traditional grading systems are unfair.
The ongoing fires and the dramatic rescue of hikers on popular trails have created a conversation among hikers about how to survive out on the trail. Emily has these tips.
So I talked to a few experts who study wildfire behavior, and they said, first of all, if you're hiking, just try to avoid getting trapped by a fire at all costs. So stay upwind and as far away from the fire as you can. But if you can't escape, you want to look for a safe spot that has less vegetation, like maybe a meadow or a rock slide, and then try to protect yourself from the radiant heat of the fire by hiding behind a boulder or a tree or just something to get in between you and the flames. It's better to lie face first on the ground than to be standing or kneeling because there's cooler air along the ground. And this is important because you're actually much more likely to die from breathing smoke or hot air than you are from physically being burned. Also, while you're lying down, cover your mouth and your nose with clothing, and maybe even consider burying your legs in dirt for extra insulation from the heat. One thing both experts stress is don't try to outrun the fire, especially over long distances or uphill. And if you do decide to wade into a lake or a body of water, just make sure it's deep enough to actually cover your body, but not so deep that you can't stand.
And finally today, we've got a new report from USC's Annenberg Inclusion Initiative looking at diversity in Hollywood. John's been digging through that one for us.
So in the very same week that the organizers of the Academy Awards announced radical new diversity standards for the Best Picture Oscar, a leading show business researcher has shown yet again why change is needed. USC's Stacy Smith and the school's Annenberg Inclusion Initiative have been studying Hollywood's hiring practices for the past 13 years. Spoiler, it's all about straight white men in front of and behind the camera. By examining the most popular films of every year, the top 100 films, Smith and her team found little to no progress when it comes to more diverse speaking parts since 2007. Smith said, quote, "It's not clear what might convince entertainment companies to change," unquote. But maybe not getting invited to the Oscars might start some new thinking.
Thank you, John. And thank you all at the KPCC and LAist Newsroom. And thank you for tuning in. Take care of your health, your family. Hopefully the fires are going to subside, and we will see you next week.